An innocent virgin woman helps a little girl lost at the airport. The millionaire sees his daughter being cared for, and hours later invites the woman to his mansion, unaware of the secrets that glass and stone held. But before we tell you this story, subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. Stay tuned. The deafening roar of aircraft pierced through the massive glass windows of Chicago O'Hare International Airport, but Claire barely noticed. Her hazel eyes, attentive and cautious, scanned the environment with a mixture of fascination and apprehension. At 28 years old, she was stepping foot in an airport for the first time, and the grandeur of the place made her heart race with an uneasiness that went beyond nervousness about the job interview awaiting her. She adjusted her navy blue, conservative dress for the 10th time, a piece she had bought especially for this occasion. It was simple but had consumed a good portion of her savings. The fabric, though of modest quality, had been chosen carefully to convey the image of professionalism she so desperately wanted to project. Her long black hair was pulled back in a discreet bun, not a strand out of place, just as her grandmother Donna Wilhelmina had always taught her. The memory of her grandmother brought a tightness to her chest. Just 3 months ago she had passed, away leaving Claire alone in the small 2-story house in Springfield, Illinois. The house, with its peeling walls and always well-maintained garden, held memories of a quiet childhood, marked by Sunday masses, novenas, and a strict upbringing that had shaped her character. A proper lady doesn't let herself be carried away by foolish dreams, Donna Wilhelmina used to say, while lighting another candle for Our Lady. And Claire had learned the lesson well, perhaps too well. At 28, she carried a kind of chastity that went beyond the physical. It was a purity of soul that many mistook for naivety, but which actually arose from old scars and a silent wisdom about the world's sorrows. The advertisement that had brought her to Chicago seemed too good to be true. A caregiver position at a high-end rest clinic, with a salary 3 times higher than what she earned as a substitute teacher in Springfield. The opportunity had come through an old school friend who now worked as a recruiter. "It's perfect for you, Claire," she had said over the phone. "They need someone with a gentle touch, who knows how to deal with fragile people." She checked her watch again, still 2 hours until the interview. Nervousness had made her arrive far too early, and now she needed to wait, sitting in one of the cold chairs in the departure area, watching the coming and going of hurried people with their rolling suitcases and determined destinations. That's when she heard the crying. At first almost imperceptible amid the airport's bustle, but it grew in her consciousness like a sad song that couldn't be ignored. Her eyes found the source, a little girl no more than 6 years old, sitting alone on the cold floor, clutching a doll that had seen better days. Claire felt something tighten in her chest. There was something in that contained crying, in that resigned posture that was painfully familiar to her. She looked around, searching for some responsible adult, but people passed by hurriedly, some casting sideways glances, no one stopping. She stood up, smoothed her dress, and walked over to the girl. She knelt down slowly, maintaining a respectful distance so as not to frighten her. "Hi," she said softly. "Is everything okay?" The girl raised her face, revealing deep blue eyes, framed by still damp lashes. There was a disconcerting maturity in that gaze, as if the child carried knowledge too heavy for her age. "My dad is late," she replied, with a voice so low that Claire had to lean in to hear. "He always is." "What's your name?" "Bella, the girl answered, clutching the doll tighter against her chest. "And this is Luna." Claire smiled, noticing that the doll, despite its poor condition, had clearly been much loved. "Luna is a very pretty name. You know, when I was little, I also had a special doll. She kept me company on nights when I felt alone." Something in Claire's tone seemed to touch Bella, who relaxed her shoulders slightly. "You used to be alone too?" The question hit Claire like a soft punch to the stomach. There was so much weight in those childish words, so much early understanding of loneliness, that for a moment she saw herself reflected in that child, her own nights of waiting, her own unspoken fears. "Sometimes," she answered honestly, "but I learned that we're never really alone. There's always someone watching over us even when we can't see them. Bella tilted her head as if deeply considering those words. Like angels. Yes, like angels, Claire smiled, thinking of her grandmother. And like people who appear when we need them. What Claire didn't know was that at that exact moment, other eyes were observing the scene. From high up in a gallery with tinted glass, a man had interrupted an important call upon noticing the interaction between the stranger and his daughter. David Stone wasn't a man easily impressed. Years commanding one of the country's largest investment groups had built around him a wall of skepticism and distrust. The mysterious death of his wife 3 years earlier had only solidified this emotional armor. But there was something in the way that woman addressed Bella that made him stop. It wasn't just kindness, it was a deeper understanding, an ability to see beyond the surface that he rarely encountered. His gaze swept over her figure, the simple but dignified dress, the well-done bun, the posture that mixed humility with a silent strength. He picked up his phone and quickly typed a message to his assistant, "Find out who she is." Meanwhile, Claire continued her conversation with Bella, who gradually began opening up. The girl talked about her school, about Luna, about how she liked to draw, but there were pauses in her speech, loaded silences that Claire sensed held untold stories. "Bella!" A masculine voice, deep and authoritative, cut through the air. Claire raised her eyes and felt her heart skip a beat. The man approaching was tall, wearing an impeccably cut suit that screamed power and money. But that's not what impressed her. It was the intensity of his gaze, a dark green that seemed to pierce her soul. "Daddy!" Bella stood up quickly, a mixture of joy and apprehension in her voice. David Stone stopped in front of them, his presence dominating the space like an elegant shadow. Claire stood up as well, suddenly conscious of every imperfection in her modest dress. "I appreciate you keeping my daughter company," he said, his voice controlled, but with a tone that Claire couldn't decipher. "There was a delay in my meeting." "It was no trouble," Claire replied, fighting to keep her voice steady under the weight of that gaze. "Bella is a delightful child." For a moment something passed through David's eyes, a shadow of emotion quickly suppressed. He extended his hand. "David Stone." "Claire Matthews," she replied, accepting the greeting. The touch was brief, but Claire felt an electric current run through her body. His hand was warm, firm, and held a tension that contradicted his apparent calm. "Are you waiting for some flight, Miss Matthews?" "No, actually." Claire hesitated, conscious of the inadequacy of her presence there. "I have a job interview. Later, I arrived too early." David nodded slightly, his eyes never leaving her face. "Well, I hope you succeed in your interview, Miss Matthews." He took Bella's hand, who cast one last look at Claire. "Bye," the girl said, her voice small again. "Bye, Bella. It was a pleasure to meet you. And you too, Luna," Claire smiled, waving to the doll. As she watched them walk away, Claire felt something strange in the air, as if that casual encounter held a greater meaning that she couldn't yet understand. She returned to her seat, trying to focus again on the interview awaiting her, but her mind kept returning to those intense green eyes and the weight they seemed to carry. What she didn't know was that, while getting into his executive car, David Stone was already making a call that would change the course of their lives. "I need a complete investigation on Claire Matthews," he said to his assistant. "I want to know everything, especially why she's in Chicago today." And so, on that cold August morning, the threads of destiny began to intertwine, weaving a plot that would mix love, secrets, and redemption. Claire, in her simplicity, couldn't imagine that her first day in Chicago would also be the first chapter of a story that would transform her life forever. The Serenity Villa Rest Clinic stood imposingly on top of Lincoln Park, its white walls and well-maintained gardens contrasting with the grey of the city that stretched below. Claire crossed the wrought iron gates, feeling the weight of the security guard's gaze as he checked her credentials. Everything there exuded luxury and discretion, from the uniformed staff to the strategically positioned security cameras. The receptionist, a middle-aged woman with an impeccable bun, led Claire through silent corridors to a meeting room on the 3rd floor. "Dr. Harrison will see you in a few minutes," she informed, leaving her alone with her thoughts and the stunning view of Chicago. Claire tried to control her breathing, mentally reviewing her qualifications. 5 years as a substitute teacher, 2 years of volunteer work with the elderly, a nursing technical course still in progress. It wasn't much, she knew that, but she hoped her experience with people would compensate for the lack of more impressive credentials. The door opened, softly, and Claire felt her heart stop. It wasn't Dr. Harrison who entered, but David Stone, even more imposing than a few hours earlier at the airport. His Italian suit was now black, creating a dramatic contrast with the immaculate white shirt. His green eyes met hers with an intensity that made her swallow hard. "Miss Matthews," he said, his deep voice filling the room. "What an interesting coincidence." But there was nothing coincidental about that encounter, and both knew it. Claire could feel the manipulation in the air, as palpable as the masculine cologne that now invaded her senses. "Mr. Stone," she managed to reply, proud that her voice didn't tremble. "I didn't expect to see you here." An almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. "I'm the main investor of Serenity Villa. Actually, I'm the one who will conduct your interview today." Claire's blood ran cold. Suddenly, the job opening that was too good to be true began to make sense. She stood up, smoothing her dress in a nervous gesture. "Mr. Stone, if this is some kind of—" "Please, sit down," he interrupted her, his voice now softer, almost gentle. "There's nothing irregular happening here. Your recruiter friend really did send your resume, which reached me this morning. After our encounter at the airport, I simply accelerated the process." Claire sat back down, still suspicious. David took the chair across from her, maintaining a professional distance that somehow seemed even more intimate than closeness. "I saw how you dealt with my daughter today," he continued, his eyes never leaving hers. "There's something in your manner, Miss Matthews, that intrigues, a capacity for connection that is rare." "Your daughter is a special child," Claire replied, choosing her words carefully. "She seems to carry a sadness that shouldn't belong to someone so young." Something darkened in David's gaze, a shadow of pain quickly masked. "Bella lost her mother 3 years ago. Since then, it has been challenging to find someone who truly understands her." Claire felt her heart tighten. The early loss of her mother, the busy father, the loneliness in those blue eyes. It all began to make painful sense. "I'm sorry," she said sincerely. "I don't want your pity, Miss Matthews," David cut in, his voice sharp again. "I want your competence. I'm offering you a different position from what you came to seek, not as a caregiver here at the clinic, but as a private companion for Bella." Claire blinked, surprised. "I beg your pardon. The salary will be 3 times higher than initially offered. You'll have a room in the mansion, all expenses paid, a car at your disposal. Your responsibilities will be exclusively with Bella, accompanying her to school, to activities, being present when I can't be." The proposal was surreal. Claire felt her head spin with the implications. "Mr. Stone, I appreciate the offer, but this seems inappropriate. We've only known each other for a few hours." David leaned slightly forward, and Claire felt the air grow denser between them. "Sometimes, Miss Matthews, some encounters carry the weight of destiny. I saw how Bella responded to you. For the first time in 3 years, I saw my daughter truly connect with someone." There was something in his voice, a carefully controlled vulnerability, that touched Claire more deeply than any words. Still, she hesitated. "And if I'm not the right person? If it doesn't work out?" "Initial contract of 3 months," he replied, returning to his professional tone. "After that period, we can both reassess the situation." He slid a folder across the table. "Here's the contract, already reviewed by my lawyers. You can take it to read carefully. Consult a lawyer if you wish." Claire took the folder, feeling the weight of the expensive paper between her fingers. "May I ask, what happened to the last companion?" A heavy silence fell over the room. David stood up, walking to the window. Against the light of the late afternoon, his silhouette seemed carved in shadows. "Bella has had 5 companions in the last 3 years. None stayed longer than a few months. They said the house was oppressive. that Bella had strange behaviors. They talked about nightmares, about a presence. He turned to Claire, and there was something almost pleading in his gaze. "My daughter is not a difficult child, Miss Matthews. She's a wounded child. She needs someone who won't be scared by shadows, who won't flee at the first sign of complexity." Claire thought of her own childhood, of the nights she would wake up screaming for a mother she never knew, of the strength her grandmother had shown in dealing with her demons. "And what makes you think I won't flee too?" An enigmatic smile touched David's lips. "Because you know pain, Miss Matthews. You carry your own shadows with dignity, and people like that don't run from others' shadows." The sun was beginning to set, painting the room with shades of gold and crimson. Claire looked at the folder in her hands, feeling the weight of the decision. Part of her screamed to refuse, to return to the safety of her small life in Springfield. But another part, a part she barely knew, yearned for something more. "When would you need my answer?" "Tomorrow would be ideal," David replied, sitting back down. "Bella asked about you all day. It would be good not to prolong the expectation." Claire nodded slightly. "And where would I stay tonight?" "I reserved a room for you at the Palmer House Hotel. A car is waiting downstairs to take you. Tomorrow at 9, another car will pick you. Up for your answer?" He paused, his green eyes once again piercing hers. "Just think carefully, Miss Matthews. This decision could change many lives, not just yours." When Claire left the building, the sky was already painted with stars. In the back seat of the luxury car, she opened the folder and began reading the contract. The clauses were clear, generous even. But between the lines of legal text, she felt there was much more at stake. In her hotel room, hours later, Claire stood at the window, observing the city that never slept. She thought of Bella, of her sad eyes and worn doll. She thought of David, of the weight he seemed to carry, of the intensity of his gaze. And she thought of herself, of all the times her grandmother said that God had a plan for everyone. Picked up her phone and typed a message to the number David had left. "I accept." The reply came almost instantly. "Welcome to the family, Miss Matthews." Claire didn't know, but at that moment, in a mansion on the outskirts of Chicago, David Stone was in his office, an untouched glass of whiskey before him, looking at an old photograph. In it, a dark-haired woman smiled, her green eyes identical, to his shining with a secret that was now forever lost. Or perhaps not. The Stone mansion rose like a fortress of glass and stone at the highest point of Lincoln Park, its modern lines cutting through the grey sky of that Monday morning. Claire, standing before the security gates with her single suitcase, felt a shiver run down her spine that had nothing to do with the cold. The security guard who received her had the serious countenance of someone who guarded more than just property. He guarded secrets. "Miss Matthews," he said, consulting a tablet, "Mr. Stone is waiting for you in his office. Maria, the housekeeper, will accompany you." Maria appeared like a silent apparition, a middle-aged lady with greying, hair pulled back in a severe bun, and eyes that seemed to evaluate every detail of Claire. "This way, please," she said, her voice carrying a slight Portuguese accent. The path to the main house was flanked by meticulously maintained gardens, but Claire noticed something strange. There were no colourful flowers, only dark green bushes and marble statues that seemed to watch her. The atmosphere was more fitting for a mausoleum than a residence. The mansion's interior was even more impressive. The double-height entry hall displayed a floating staircase of glass and steel, so transparent it seemed made of ice. The walls, in shades of grey and white, were decorated with abstract artworks in somber colours. There were no family photographs in sight. "Your room is already prepared," Maria informed as they climbed the stairs. "It's on the same floor as Miss Bella's room. Mr. Stone insisted on it." Claire nodded, her low heels making a soft echo on the marble floor. They passed several closed doors until Maria stopped before one. "This is your room. You can leave your suitcase here. Mr. Stone's office is at the end of the hall to the right." The room was larger than Claire's entire former apartment in Springfield. A king-size bed dominated the space, covered with sheets that Claire was certain were Egyptian cotton. One of the walls was entirely glass, offering a panoramic view of Chicago. "Thank you, Maria," Claire said, placing her suitcase on a grey velvet ottoman. The housekeeper hesitated at the door as if wanting to say something. Finally, she spoke in a low voice. "Miss, be careful with the shadows of this house." Before Claire could ask what she meant, Maria had already disappeared into the hallway. With a sigh, Claire checked her appearance in the full-length mirror. The basic black dress and low heels looked even simpler in that luxurious environment, but she lifted her chin. She wasn't there to impress anyone with appearances. David's office was behind double doors of dark wood. Claire knocked softly and heard his deep voice respond, "Come in." If the rest of the house was impressive, the office was overwhelming. 3 of the 4 walls were glass, offering a 270-degree view of the city. The remaining wall was covered by a floor-to-ceiling library. David stood by the window, his impeccable black suit contrasting with the daylight. "Miss Matthews," he turned, his green eyes meeting hers with that disturbing intensity. "Welcome to your new home." "Thank you, Mr. Stone," Claire replied, keeping her voice steady. "It's an impressive property." "And oppressive, isn't it?" He gave a half smile, indicating a leather chair for her. "Please sit down. We need to discuss some details about your responsibilities." Claire sat down, crossing her legs in an attempt to appear more professional than she felt. David remained standing, his hands in his pants pockets in a pose that should seem casual, but somehow conveyed power. "Bella is at school at the moment," he began. "She'll return at 3 in the afternoon. I want you to wait for her in your room. It's important that she feels this is a natural reunion, not something orchestrated." "I understand," Claire said. "Is there anything specific I should know about her routine?" David walked to his desk, picking up a folder. "Here's the complete schedule. Ballet classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays, therapy on Wednesdays, swimming on Saturdays, but there's something more important you need to know." He paused, as if carefully choosing his words. "Bella has episodes, nightmares mainly. Sometimes she talks about seeing people who aren't there. The therapist says it's a manifestation of trauma from losing her mother, but you're not sure," Claire completed softly. David looked at her with surprise, as if not expecting such perceptiveness. "No, I'm not. There are moments when she says things, knows things she shouldn't know about her mother, about this house." "What happened to her mother?" Claire asked, knowing she was entering dangerous territory. David's face closed instantly. "Lauren suffered an accident. She fell from the main staircase. It was instantaneous." But there was something in his voice, a tension that suggested more untold stories. Claire decided not to press, not yet. "And regarding the limits of the house, are there restricted areas?" "The 3rd floor is closed for renovation," he replied quickly. "My room and office are obviously private. The rest of the house is at your disposal. Oh, and the basement is locked. Water infiltration problems." Claire nodded, memorizing the information and also the hesitations in his words. "And regarding visits, am I allowed to receive friends or family?" A cold smile touched David's lips. "Miss Matthews, this is a house that values privacy. Visits need to be approved in advance. But something tells me you don't have many people to invite, do you?" The comment hit Claire like a gentle slap, so he had investigated her past. Of course he had. "No, Mr. Stone, I don't." "Don't misunderstand me." He softened his tone. "Your discretion was one of the factors that attracted me to your profile. Solitary people tend to better keep others' secrets." At that moment, a knock on the door interrupted them. Maria entered with a tea tray, her movements precise and silent like a ghost's. Claire noticed she avoided looking directly at David. "One more thing," he said after Maria left. "Bella sometimes mentions a song, an old lullaby. If she starts singing it, I want you to notify me immediately." "Why?" "Just do what I'm asking, Miss Matthews." His voice had an edge of steel. "There are things in this house that are better not questioned too much." Claire felt a shiver run down her spine, but kept her gaze steady. "With all due respect, Mr. Stone, if I'm going to care for your daughter, I need to understand the risks and challenges involved." For a moment, something like admiration shone in David's green eyes. "You're braver than you appear, aren't you?" He approached, stopping just a few steps from her. "Or perhaps you just don't know what you should fear." His cologne, A mixture of sandalwood and something darker invaded Claire's senses. She forced herself to remain still, even when he leaned slightly forward. "Take good care of her. Miss Matthews," his voice was almost a whisper, "and maybe if we're lucky you'll survive this house." Before Claire could process what he meant by that, the sound of a car arriving broke the moment. "Bella arrived early," David said, returning to his professional pose. "Go to your room, let her find you naturally." Claire stood up, her legs slightly shaky. When she was at the door, his voice stopped her once more. "And Miss Matthews, welcome to the Stone family. I hope you're prepared for what that means." As she walked back to her room, Claire couldn't help but notice how the shadows seemed longer in the corridors, how the silence seemed to buzz with unspoken secrets. Somewhere in the house, a clock struck 3 times, the sound echoing like an omen. Maria was right, Claire thought. One had to be careful with the shadows of this house. The problem was that she still didn't know if the real danger was in the shadows or in whoever cast them. The sound of small footsteps in the hallway made Claire's heart race. She was sitting in the chair by her new room's window, pretending to read a book, when the door opened slowly. Bella appeared, still in her school uniform, her blue eyes wide with surprise. "Claire." The girl's voice was a mixture of disbelief and contained joy. You live here now?" "Hi, Bella," Claire smiled, closing the book. "Yes, I'm going to live here for a while. Your father hired me to be your companion." Bella entered the room hesitantly, Luna, the worn doll, still firmly clutched against her chest. "Are you going to be my new babysitter?" "I'm going to be your friend," Claire corrected gently. "Someone to talk to accompany you. In activities, to be around when you need." The girl came closer, her eyes scanning the room as if looking for something. "The others also said that," she murmured, "but they always left, especially after they started hearing." Claire felt a chill on the back of her neck. "Hearing what, Bella?" "The music," the girl replied, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. "At night when the house gets quiet. It comes from the 3rd floor even though Daddy says it's empty." Claire remembered David's warning about the lullaby, but something prevented her from interrupting Bella. There was an urgency in the girl's gaze, as if she desperately needed someone to believe her. "Sometimes," Bella continued, sitting on the edge of the bed, "I wake up and she's there, the lady in white. She looks sad, but not scary. It's like she wants to tell me something." "And what does she say?" Bella shook her head. "She never speaks. She just sings. The same song always. About a rose that grows in the dark, waiting for the sun to return." Claire felt her blood freeze. She knew that song. Her grandmother used to sing it when she was little, an old Portuguese lullaby passed down through generations. How could Bella know it? "Daddy doesn't like when I talk about it." Bella hugged Luna tighter. "He gets angry. Says they're just dreams that I need to forget. But they're not dreams, Claire. I know they're not." At that moment, a knock on the door interrupted them. Maria entered with a snack tray, cookies, juice, and cut fruit. Her eyes met Claire's with a silent warning. "Snack time, Miss Bella," the housekeeper said. "Then you need to do your homework." Bella sighed but didn't protest. "Can you stay with me while I do my homework, Claire?" "Of course," Claire smiled, trying to ignore the weight she felt in her chest. "How about you have your snack, change clothes, and we meet in the library in half an hour?" The girl nodded, standing up. At the door, she stopped and turned. "Claire? I'm happy you're here." After Bella left, Maria began arranging the tray, but her movements were tense. "The girl talked about the music, didn't she?" Claire nodded. "Have you heard it too?" Maria made the sign of the cross. "This house has its own rhythms, miss, its own secrets. The less you know, the safer you'll be." "Maria," Claire lowered her voice, "what really happened to Bella's mother?" The housekeeper froze, her eyes widening with fear. "Don't ask questions about Mrs. Lauren, please. Some doors are better kept closed." Before Claire could insist, Maria hurried out of the room. Through the window, Claire saw David arriving in his black Porsche. He got out of the car and stopped, looking up. For an impossible moment their eyes met, as if he knew exactly where she would be. Claire stepped away from the window, her heart beating irregularly. There was something about that man that deeply disturbed her, a mixture of danger and magnetism that she didn't know how to process. And there was something in that house, in the unspoken words, in the frightened looks, that suggested a web of secrets much more complex than she had imagined. In the library, half an hour later, Claire was helping Bella with her math homework when she sensed a presence. David stood in the doorway watching them. There was something different in his gaze, a softness she hadn't seen before. "Daddy," Bella smiled, "Claire is helping me with fractions. She explains better than my teacher." "Really?" David entered the library, his steps echoing on the wooden floor. "Well, Miss Matthews seems to have many hidden talents." Claire felt her face warm under his gaze. "Bella is a very dedicated student. I can see," he approached, leaning over the table to examine his daughter's notebook. His cologne enveloped Claire, making her head spin slightly. "Excellent work, Princess." "Can we all have dinner together today?" Bella asked, her eyes shining with hope. "Please?" David hesitated, his gaze meeting Claire's. "If Miss Matthews doesn't mind." "It would be a pleasure," she replied, trying to keep her voice neutral. "Great," Bella clapped her hands. "Can I ask Maria to make that ravioli?" "I like." "Of course," David smiled, a real smile that completely transformed his face. "Why don't you go talk to her now? Miss Matthews and I need to discuss some routine details." After Bella left skipping, the atmosphere in the library changed. David sat in the chair his daughter had occupied, his green eyes fixed on Claire. "She talked about the music, didn't she?" Claire considered lying, but something told her it would be useless. "Yes." "And about the lady in white?" "Also." David sighed, running his hand through his hair in a surprisingly human gesture. "Bella has a very active imagination. After her mother's death, she developed these stories. It's part of the grieving process, the doctors say." "And if it's not?" Claire heard herself asking. "If there's something more?" His eyes darkened. "There's no something more, Miss Matthews. There's only a traumatized child, and a house too big full of echoes. Don't feed these fantasies." "With all due respect, Mr. Stone, ignoring her fears won't make them disappear. I'm not paying you to be a psychologist." His voice had a dangerous edge now. "I'm paying you to take care of her, keep her safe and happy. Within the limits I've established." Claire straightened her posture, meeting his gaze. "And if those limits are hurting her more than protecting her?" For a moment, something like admiration shone in David's eyes. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. "You're fascinating, you know. So small, so simple, and yet you're not afraid of me." "Should I be?" A dark smile touched his lips. "Maybe. The last person who challenged me this way isn't here anymore to tell the story." Claire felt her heart skip a beat, but kept her gaze steady. "Are you threatening me, Mr. Stone?" "No." He stood up, his body too close to hers. "I'm warning you. There are things in this house, Miss Matthews, that are better left sleeping. Please don't make me deal with another tragedy." With that, he left the library, leaving Claire with a racing heart and thousands of unanswered questions. Through the window, she saw the sun setting, painting the sky blood red. The shadows began to stretch through the mansion's corridors, and somewhere, Claire could swear she heard the first chords of an old lullaby. Dinner at the Stone Mansion was a ceremony almost religious in its ritual. The black mahogany table, long enough to accommodate 20 people, was set for only 3. David at the head, Bella to his right, and Claire on the opposite side. The French porcelain and silver cutlery reflected the soft light of the candelabras, creating dancing shadows on the cream-colored walls. Maria served the dishes with the precision of a ballerina: wild mushroom ravioli for Bella, pepper steak for David, and a generous portion of both for Claire, who felt momentarily overwhelmed by the formality of the situation. "Do you like red wine, Miss Matthews?" David asked, gesturing to the sommelier who waited discreetly. "Actually, I prefer not to drink during work hours," Claire replied, maintaining the professional tone she was determined to preserve. An enigmatic smile touched David's lips. "Admirable. But technically your shift ended at 7 p.m. It's almost 9 now. Before Claire could protest, he gestured and the sommelier began pouring a dark ruby liquid into her glass. Chateau Margaux, 1982, David said, his green eyes fixed on her. Consider, and also thank you for the productive afternoon with Bella. Claire helped me with fractions, Bella exclaimed, her voice breaking the tense atmosphere. And then we drew together. She knows how to make beautiful flowers. Really? David raised an eyebrow. I didn't know you had artistic talents, Miss Matthews. Just simple sketches, Claire shrugged, tasting the wine to hide her discomfort. The liquid exploded on her tongue with notes of dark cherry and oak, so rich it almost made her choke. My grandmother taught me when I was little. Your grandmother? David swirled the glass between his fingers. Donna Wilhelmina, isn't it? A remarkable woman from what I researched. She raised you alone after your mother. Daddy, Bella interrupted, her voice surprisingly firm. You promised not to do that. Claire looked surprised at the girl, who now faced her father with a mixture of reproach and protection. David seemed momentarily disconcerted. Do what? Princess? Investigate people. Use what you discovered to make them feel small. A heavy silence fell over the table. Claire felt her heart swell with affection for the child who, so young, already understood the power games of adults. It's okay, Bella, she said softly. Your father has the right to know about the people who work in his house. No, Bella insisted. It's not fair. Claire is good. She doesn't lie like the others. She doesn't pretend. And you're trying to scare her, like you did with all of them. David put down his cutlery, his face a mask of control. Bella, I think it's past your bedtime. But dinner just started. Now. The order was soft but definitive. Bella pushed back her chair, tears shining in her eyes. Can I at least say goodnight to Claire? David nodded rigidly. The girl ran to Claire's side and hugged her, whispering in her ear, Don't let him scare you, please don't leave. After Bella left, escorted by Maria, the silence became almost tangible. Claire took another sip of wine, needing the liquid courage. Your daughter is very perceptive, she said finally. Too perceptive for her own good, David replied, his voice low, like her mother. What happened to her? To Bella's mother, I mean. Really? David raised his eyes, and Claire almost recoiled from the intensity of his gaze. Why do you think there's more than what I've already told you? Because this house is full of whispers, Claire responded, surprised by her own boldness, of averted looks, of locked doors, and mainly because Bella doesn't act like a child who lost her mother in an accident. She acts like someone carrying a secret too heavy. Careful, Miss Matthews, David leaned forward, his voice a soft warning. Curiosity can be dangerous. More dangerous than ignoring the signs? Than pretending not to see a child suffering? For a moment something flared in David's eyes. Anger, perhaps, or something more complex. He stood abruptly, walking to the window that overlooked the gardens now immersed in darkness. Lauren was complicated, he said finally, his back turned to Claire. She had episodes of deep depression, alternating with periods of extreme euphoria. The doctors never reached a definitive diagnosis. Claire remained silent, sensing that any interruption could break the moment of vulnerability. On the night she died, he continued, his voice rougher, we had argued. She was different. She talked about a song that wouldn't stop playing, about a presence in the house. She said she needed to protect Bella, that something was wrong. When I tried to make her take her medication, she ran. The stairs were slippery because of the rain. He turned and Claire saw something she never expected to see on David Stone's face. Contained tears. The coroner said it was instantaneous, that she didn't suffer. But Bella was at the top of the stairs. She saw everything. My God, Claire whispered, her heart tightening. After that, she started with the stories. The lady in white, the music, as if she were trying to make sense of what happened. The therapists say it's normal, that it's part of the process. And you believe that? David returned to the table, sitting closer to Claire this time. What else could it be? There was a plea in his voice that caught her off guard. Claire found herself extending her hand. lightly touching his on the table. The contact sent an electric current through her arm. "Sometimes," she said softly, "children see things that we adults refuse to see, not because they're more innocent, but because they're more honest." David didn't withdraw his hand. On the contrary, his fingers intertwined with hers almost of their own will. "And what do you see, Claire?" It was the first time he called her by her first name, and the sound sent a shiver down her spine. "I see pain," she replied honestly. "So much pain in you, in Bella, in this house, and I see secrets, so many secrets that the air seems heavy with them. And even so, you stay." "Even so, I stay." Their eyes met, and for a moment the world seemed to stop. Claire could feel the warmth of his hand, the weight of his gaze, the electricity in the air between them. It was dangerous, she knew that. More dangerous than any ghost or secret that house could hide. The moment was broken by a sharp scream. Coming from upstairs, "Bella!" Both jumped up, their hands separating as if they had received a shock. They ran upstairs, Claire feeling her heart hammer against her ribs. When they reached Bella's room, they found the girl sitting on the bed, her eyes wide with terror. "She's here," Bella whispered, "the lady in white, and she's not alone." Claire looked at the corner of the room that Bella was pointing to, and for an instant, a single instant that she would later wonder if she had imagined, she saw a white form moving in the shadows, and she heard, very softly, the first notes of an old lullaby. That night, after Bella finally fell asleep, not in her own bed but in Claire's room, clutching Luna as if the doll were her only anchor to reality, Claire couldn't sleep. Sitting in the chair by the window, she watched the girl and thought about everything that had happened in the last 24 hours. David's touch still burned on her skin, a sensation she tried desperately to ignore. It was inappropriate, dangerous, possibly even unethical, to feel this attraction to her employer, especially considering the mysteries surrounding his wife's death, the secrets that seemed to permeate every corner of that mansion. A movement at the door brought her back to reality. David stood there, his silhouette outlined against the hallway light. He had removed his jacket, and the white shirt sleeves were rolled up to his elbows, revealing strong forearms marked by a tattoo she couldn't distinguish in the dim light. "How is she?" he asked in a low voice, entering the room. "Sleeping?" "Finally," Claire replied in the same tone. "But she was really scared, Mr. Stone. This wasn't an ordinary nightmare." "David," he corrected, stopping beside the chair, "I think after what happened at dinner, we can dispense with formalities, at least when we're alone." Claire felt her heart accelerate, but kept her voice steady. "I'm not sure that would be appropriate." "Appropriate?" He gave a low laugh without humor. "Nothing in this situation is appropriate, Claire. A teacher from the countryside living in my house, my daughter having visions, He paused, running his hand through his hair in a gesture of frustration. "I'm feeling things I shouldn't feel." The air between them became dense, charged with unspoken possibilities. Claire stood up, needing to create some physical distance, before she did something imprudent. "We need to talk about what Bella saw," she said, changing the subject. "About what I saw." David visibly tensed. "You didn't see anything, it was just a play of light and shadow." "There was someone in that room," Claire insisted. "Or something, and that music—" "No!" His voice rose dangerously, making Bella stir. "In her sleep." Both froze until the girl calmed down again. "There's no music," David continued in a lower voice, but no less intense. "There are no presences, no ghosts. There's only an old house with acoustic problems and a traumatized child. And why do you seem to be trying to convince yourself more than me?" His eyes met hers in the semi-darkness, green and dangerous like a stormy sea. In 2 steps, he was too close, his cologne enveloping Claire like an invisible prison. "You don't know what you're talking about," he whispered. "You know nothing about this house, about my family, about me." "Then tell me," Claire challenged, raising her face to look at him. "Stop playing with half-truths and insinuations. What really happened to Lauren? Why is the 3rd floor really closed? And who is the woman your daughter sees?" For a moment, Claire thought he would scream again, or perhaps storm out of the room. Instead, David did something much more dangerous. He raised his hand and touched her face. his fingers tracing a soft line from her temple to her chin. "You're extraordinary," he murmured. "So small, so apparently fragile, and yet you're not afraid to confront me." "Maybe I should be," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "Yes," he agreed, his thumb brushing her lower lip. "You definitely should be." The kiss, when it came, was like diving into boiling water, shocking, dangerous, and impossibly addictive. Claire felt her knees weaken, and David's hands descended to her waist, supporting her. There was desperation. In that kiss, a hunger that went beyond physical desire. It was the hunger of someone who had been alone for too long. It was the sound of Bella moving in bed that brought them back to reality. They separated abruptly, both breathless, Claire feeling her heart hammer against her ribs as if it wanted to escape. "That was—" she began, but David interrupted her. "A mistake," he said, his voice hoarse. "A mistake that can't be repeated." Before Claire could respond, he was already at the door. He stopped for a moment, his back rigid with tension. "Lock the door when I leave. And Claire, no matter what you hear tonight, don't leave this room." With that, he left, leaving Claire with the taste of him still on her lips and thousands of questions exploding in her mind. Outside, the night seemed darker than normal, and the wind blowing through the garden trees carried distant notes of a familiar melody. Claire walked to the bed, lying down next to Bella, without bothering to change clothes. The girl, instinctively, snuggled against her, murmuring something in her sleep. For a moment, Claire thought she heard her say "Mommy," but she wasn't sure. As she tried to fall asleep, her mind wandered between David's kiss and the house's mysteries. There was a connection there, she could feel it, between Lauren's death, the secrets of the third floor, the music that haunted Bella. And now she was irremediably involved, not just in the mysteries, but in the man who guarded them. Somewhere. In the mansion, a clock struck midnight, and as if responding to the call of the dead hours, the music began. Soft at first, then clearer. An old lullaby about a rose in the dark, waiting for the sun to return. Claire held Bella tighter against her and closed her eyes, knowing that sleep wouldn't come, not while the mansion's secrets danced in the shadows, not while David's taste burned on her lips like a dangerous promise. The night would be long, and she had the feeling it was just the beginning. Morning came grey and cold, finding Claire already awake, if at any point she had really slept. Bella still rested peacefully beside her, Luna firmly embraced against her chest. The wall clock marked 6:30 when the first sounds of the house beginning to wake reached her ears. Carefully, so as not to wake the girl, Claire got up. Her dress was wrinkled from sleeping in it, and her lips still tingled with the memory of David's kiss. She approached the window, observing the fog that covered the gardens like a ghostly mantle. That's when she saw the car, a black Mercedes, different from the Porsche David normally used, parking discreetly at the back of the mansion. An elegant woman got out of the driver's seat, her platinum hair standing out against the black overcoat. Even at a distance, Claire could notice something familiar in her features. "That's Aunt Helena," Bella's sleepy voice startled her. The girl had woken up and was now beside her at the window. "She always comes when Daddy travels. Your father is going to travel." Bella shrugged, a surprisingly adult gesture. "He always travels after something happens, like last night." Claire felt her heart tighten. "Were you awake?" "No," the girl replied, her blue eyes meeting Claire's with wisdom beyond her age. "But the house tells," the walls whisper. Before Claire could process what that meant, a knock on the door interrupted them. Maria entered, her face more tense than normal. "Miss Bella, bath time. Breakfast will be served in half an hour and your Aunt Helena is here." Bella hugged Claire before leaving, whispering in her ear, "Be careful with her. Aunt Helena knows all the secrets, even the ones she shouldn't know." After Bella left with Maria, Claire took a quick shower and changed. Clothes. A simple navy blue dress she had brought from Springfield. When she went down for breakfast, she found Helena Stone sitting at the dining room table, an untouched cup of coffee before her. Up close, the resemblance to David was even more evident. The same penetrating green eyes, the same aristocratic bone structure. But there was something more in Helena, a calculated coldness that made Claire's blood freeze. "So you're the new companion," Helena said, her voice smooth as poisoned velvet. "Claire Matthews. David told me about you." "Miss Stone," Claire greeted politely. "It's a pleasure to meet you." "Helena, please," a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We're practically family now, aren't we, since you're taking care of my niece?" Claire sat down, accepting the cup of coffee Maria served. "David, Mr. Stone isn't here." "My brother had to leave for an urgent meeting in London," Helena replied, studying Claire intently. "I'll stay a few days to supervise things here." Something in the way she said supervise made Claire feel like an insect under a microscope. "I understand. Should I maintain Bella's normal routine?" "Oh yes," Helena took a sip of coffee. "But first I'd like you to tell me about last night, about what exactly Bella saw in her room." Claire hesitated, remembering the girl's warning. "It was just a nightmare," she said cautiously. "Children often—" "Don't lie to me, Miss Matthews," Helena interrupted, her voice losing all pretense of cordiality. "We know very well it wasn't just a nightmare. You also saw something, didn't you? And heard the music." The coffee in Claire's cup trembled slightly. "How do you know about the music?" Helena leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Because I've also heard it, just like Lauren, just like all the women who spent too much time in this house." "What is this music? What's happening here?" For a moment, something like compassion passed through Helena's eyes. "You really have no idea, do you? About the history of this family, about what happened to Lauren, about why David really brought you here?" "Then tell me," Claire challenged, her voice firmer than she felt. Helena leaned back in her chair, an enigmatic smile playing on her lips. "It's not my place to tell, but I can give you advice. There's a library in the basement. The key is in the third drawer of David's office, inside an old music box. If you want answers, start there." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because," Helena stood gracefully, "unlike my brother, I believe some truths need to come to light, before someone else gets hurt, before Bella—" She stopped, as if she had said too much. At that moment, Bella ran into the room, already dressed for school. "Aunt Helena," she exclaimed, hugging her aunt with genuine affection. "Are you taking me to school today?" "Of course, dear," Helena smiled, a real smile this time. "Why don't you go get your backpack?" After Bella left, Helena turned to Claire. "One last time. One last thing, Miss Matthews. If you decide to look for these answers, do it today. Use the excuse that you need to get something from your apartment in Springfield, but be quick and discreet." "Why today?" "Because today is a new moon," Helena replied, as if that explained everything. "The house gets quieter during the new moon. Secrets become easier to find." With that, she left, leaving Claire with her cold coffee and thousands of new questions. Through the window, she saw Helena and Bella getting into the car. The girl, waving cheerfully, but there was something in Helena's look when she started the car, an urgency, a silent warning. Claire waited until Maria started cleaning the kitchen, then silently went up to David's office. Her heart beat so hard she was sure everyone in the house could hear it. The third drawer was locked, but the hairpin she always carried out of habit served as an improvised lockpick. The music box was old, in mother-of-pearl and tarnished silver. When Claire opened it, a familiar melody began to play, the same song that haunted the house. With trembling fingers, she took the small golden key hidden under the mechanism. She went down the stairs to the basement, each step echoing like a sentence. The key fitted perfectly in the old lock, and the door opened with a groan of protest. The air that escaped smelled of secrets kept for too long. The library was a circular space, with floor-to-ceiling shelves covered with old books and yellowed documents. But it wasn't the books that caught Claire's attention. It was the portrait, hanging on the wall opposite the door. In it, a young woman held a small child. Her hair was dark like Claire's, her eyes green like David's. And around her neck, shining softly in the painting, was a medallion identical to the one Claire had always carried with her. an inheritance from her mother, whom she had never known. With trembling fingers, Claire took the medallion from inside her dress, comparing it with the painting. They were exactly the same, down to the small scratch on the right side. "I see you found our mother's portrait," a voice said behind her. Claire turned abruptly to find Helena standing in the doorway, her green eyes shining in the dim light. "Yes, Claire. You're not just another employee David brought home, you're our sister, the daughter our mother gave up for adoption before she died." Claire's world began to spin, and the last thing she heard before everything went dark was the soft sound of the music box, playing that old lullaby that had always been part of her dreams and her nightmares. The smell of ammonia salts brought Claire back to consciousness. She was lying on an old leather sofa, still in the basement library, with Helena sitting beside her. The music box continued playing its hypnotic melody. "Drink this," Helena offered a glass of cognac. "It will help with the shock." Claire accepted, the drink with trembling hands, her mind still trying to process the revelation. How is this possible?" Helena sighed, standing up to get an old folder from one of the shelves. "Our mother, Beatrice Stone, was an extraordinary woman and deeply troubled. When she became pregnant for the third time, our father had already been dead for 6 months." "Third time?" Claire sat up, her head still spinning. "David is the oldest. I was born 2 years later. And you—" Helena opened the folder, revealing an old birth certificate. "You were born on a new moon night, during a storm that almost destroyed this house." Claire took the document with trembling fingers. There it was, her original name, Claire Beatrice. Stone, born May 15, 1997. Mother, Beatrice Montenegro Stone. Father, not declared. "But why did she give me up for adoption? Why keep it secret?" Helena sat again, her green eyes, their mother's eyes, Claire realized, clouded with old memories. "Our mother had gifts, sensitivities that went beyond normal. She saw things, heard things, the music, mainly. She said it was a warning, a call from those who had already departed." "The same music Bella hears," Claire murmured. "The same music all Stone women hear eventually," Helena confirmed. "It's part of our heritage, a gift or a curse, depending on how you see it." "And Lauren? Did she also hear it?" A sad smile touched Helena's lips. "Lauren was more than just David's wife. She was our second cousin on the maternal side. She also had the gift. But unlike our mother, she couldn't deal with it." Claire felt her blood freeze. "So it wasn't an accident, her fall—" "Lauren was trying to escape," Helena interrupted, her voice low. "Not from the house, not from David. She was trying to escape from the voices, from the music, from the secrets this family has carried for generations." "And David? Does he know about me?" "He knows now. He found the documents a few months ago when he was looking for Lauren's will. That's how he found you." Claire stood abruptly, anger beginning to replace shock. "So all this was planned? The encounter at the airport, the job offer. He was manipulating me." "David has his own demons to face," Helena replied diplomatically. "After our mother died, he assumed responsibility for the family, for the secrets. Maybe he was trying to protect you, keeping you close." "Protect me? By kissing me? What kind of protection is that?" Helena froze. "He kissed you. When?" "Last night," Claire replied, blushing as she remembered. "After Bella had the episode." "My God," Helena stood up, her face pale. "That changes everything. Claire, you need to leave this house now." "What are you talking about?" "History repeating itself." Helena began pacing back and forth. "First the music, then the attraction, then the secrets begin to be revealed. It was the same with Lauren, and with our mother before her." "Helena," Claire grabbed her sister's arm. How strange to think of her like that, forcing her to stop. "What exactly are you afraid of?" For a moment, Helena seemed older, more vulnerable. "There's a reason our mother gave you up for adoption, Claire. She had a vision the night you were born. She saw that 3 Stone women under the same roof would bring an ancient tragedy to light, a secret buried in this house's foundations, sealed with blood and broken promises. What secret? Bella's true father, a deep voice answered from the door. David stood there, his face a mask of contained fury. The secret Lauren took to her grave, the secret our mother died trying to protect. Claire felt her world spin again. You're not Bella's father. Biologically. No, David entered. The library, his steps echoing in the tense silence. Her father was our older brother, Anthony, the son our mother had before marrying our father, the son no one can know existed. David, no, Helena pleaded. She doesn't need to know this. She does. He approached Claire, his green eyes burning, with a frightening intensity. Because now she's part of this, because I brought her back even knowing I shouldn't, because when I saw her at that airport, I knew it was too late to turn back. You knew who I was from the beginning, Claire accused, tears of anger burning her eyes. You manipulated me, brought me to this house. Yes, he admitted, his voice hoarse. But not for the reason you think. Not to protect you, as Helena suggested, but because I needed to see you, to know you. Because I spent my whole life wondering about the sister our mother hid from the world. And the kiss. Was that also part of your sick plan? David took another step toward her. Too close. Now, the kiss was a mistake I've been making in my thoughts since the moment I saw you. Because you're not just our sister, Claire. You're the key to all of this. The third stone woman the prophecy mentioned. What prophecy? It was Helena who answered, her voice trembling. When 3 women of stone blood inhabit these walls, the truth will come to light. The spilled blood will cry for justice, and the cycle will begin again. At that moment, a scream cut the air, coming from upstairs. Bella's voice. No, David paled. She should be at school. The 3 ran upstairs, the sound of their steps echoing through the corridors like a dark omen. When they reached Bella's room, they found the girl standing in the center of the room, her eyes fixed on something only she could see. She's here, Bella whispered, the first stone, and she wants everyone to know the truth. The music box in the basement began playing louder, its melody piercing through the walls like an ancient lament. And on the room's walls, written in elegant handwriting in red ink that still seemed fresh, were the words that would change everything. The blood of the innocent cries for justice. The truth can no longer be buried. Claire looked at David, at Helena, at little Bella, who now seemed to carry the weight of generations of secrets on her small shoulders. And she knew, with a certainty that came from somewhere beyond reason, that the true horrors of the stone mansion were just beginning to be revealed. The chaos that followed was like a storm in slow motion. Maria ran into the room, her eyes wide, with horror upon seeing the words on the wall. Helena tried to calm Bella, who now trembled in her aunt's arms, while David gave orders over the phone for security to isolate the property. Claire remained motionless, her gaze fixed on the red, letters that seemed to pulse with their own life. There was something familiar about that handwriting, something that made her heart tighten with a memory that wasn't hers. Everyone to the library, David ordered, his voice cutting through the tense air. Maria, take Bella to... No! The girl screamed, surprising everyone. I need to stay. She said I need to stay. Who said, dear? Helena asked softly. The lady in the portrait. The first stone. Bella pointed to an empty spot in the room. She's right there. Claire followed the girl's gaze and for a fleeting moment saw, or thought she saw, the silhouette of a woman in an antique dress, her green eyes identical to her own. The figure seemed to nod slightly before vanishing like smoke. To the library, David repeated, more firmly this time. All of us. Now. The group descended in silence, each step echoing through the corridors like a harbinger of what was to come. The mansion's main library, not the secret one in the basement, was an imposing environment, with floor-to-ceiling shelves and a black marble fireplace that dominated one of the walls. Sit down, Bella. Helena guided the girl to one of the leather sofas. Claire, please, stay with her. Claire nodded, sitting beside her niece. How strange to think of her that way now. Bella immediately snuggled against her, as if seeking protection. "No more lies," David declared, serving himself a generous dose of whiskey. "It's time for the whole truth to come out." "Are you sure?" Helena questioned, casting a meaningful look at Bella. "She already knows more than all of us," he replied bitterly. "Don't you, Princess?" Bella nodded slightly. "The lady in the portrait tells me things every night, about the past, about the secrets, about what really happened to Mommy." Claire felt a shiver run down her spine. "What did she tell you, Bella?" The girl took a deep breath. Her blue eyes, Anthony's eyes, Claire now realized, fixed on the fireplace flames. "She said our family carries a curse, that it started with her, with a forbidden love and a broken promise, and that each generation pays the price until the truth is revealed." "The first stone," Helena murmured, sitting heavily in an armchair. "Isabella Stone, our great-great-grandmother." "What promise was broken?" Claire asked, though part of her feared the answer. David went to one of the shelves, pulling out an old book bound in red leather. "Isabella's diary," he explained, opening it carefully. "The story our family tried to bury for generations." "Isabella was a woman ahead of her time," Helena continued, her voice taking on the tone of someone telling an ancient story. "Married to Giuseppe Stone, a cruel man who treated her like property. She fell in love with another, a servant of the house, Miguel. They had a child in secret." David picked up the narrative, his eyes meeting Claire's. "Anthony, the first of many. Stone's secrets. Giuseppe found out," Bella said softly, as if reciting something she had heard many times. "He killed Miguel in the house's dungeons and made Isabella watch." Claire felt her stomach turn. "But what does this have to do with Isabella?" "Cursed the family before dying," David interrupted her, his voice hoarse. "She swore that while the truth didn't come to light, while the spilled blood wasn't avenged, the Stones would carry the weight of their sins. The family's women would hear the lament of the dead, and forbidden loves would repeat generation after generation. Like what happened with Anthony and Lauren," Helena completed softly. "Like almost happened with you and David." Claire felt her face burn. "But we didn't." "Not yet," David interrupted her, his green eyes burning into hers. "But it could have happened, like it happened with our brother and our cousin, like it happened with Isabella and Miguel." "And Mommy," Bella asked, her voice small, "did she die because of the curse?" A heavy silence fell over the library. It was Helena who finally answered. "Lauren discovered the truth about Anthony, about her own Stone lineage. She discovered she was a direct descendant of Isabella and Miguel, through a line everyone thought had been extinct. The shock was devastating." "She didn't fall," David said, his voice laden with pain. "She jumped, after confronting Anthony about everything, after realizing that her own love was part of the curse. She chose to break the cycle the only way. She knew how." Claire hugged Bella tighter, feeling the girl tremble. "And Anthony? What happened to him?" "No one knows," Helena replied. "He disappeared the same night. Some say he also killed himself, others that he fled abroad. David assumed custody of Bella, kept the paternity secret, tried to protect everyone." "By lying," Claire completed bitterly. "Manipulating, bringing me to this house, even knowing the risks." "I needed to find you." David took a step toward her. "I needed to understand why our mother gave you up for adoption, why she chose to protect you from this legacy while leaving us to carry the weight." At that moment, the library lights flickered. The temperature seemed to drop several degrees, and the fire in the fireplace trembled as if hit by a non-existent breeze. "She's here," Bella whispered, her eyes fixed on a point behind David. "Isabella, and she's not alone." Claire followed the girl's gaze and felt her heart stop. There, as solid as any of them, stood the woman from the portrait, Isabella Stone in her period dress, her green eyes shining with supernatural intensity. And beside her, "Mommy," Bella called, her voice trembling. Lauren Stone smiled sadly at her daughter, her white dress still stained red from the night of her death. And when she began to sing, Claire immediately recognized the melody, the same lullaby that had haunted her dreams all her life. The truth was about to be revealed, and with it, the true price of the stone curse. Lauren's voice filled the library like mist, each note of the ancient lullaby loaded with the weight of generations of secrets. Claire felt Bella squeeze her hand tightly, while David and Helena remained paralyzed, their pale faces reflecting the supernatural glow emanating from the two apparitions. "The time has come," Isabella spoke, her voice echoing as if coming from far away. "The circle needs to be broken." "How?" Claire heard herself asking, surprised by the firmness of her own voice. "With the truth," Lauren replied, her sad eyes fixed on Bella. "All the truth." David stepped forward, his posture defiant even in the face of the supernatural. "We've already told everything. About the curse, about Anthony." "No," Isabella interrupted him. "You didn't tell about Beatrice's choice, about the real reason she gave Claire up for adoption." Claire felt her heart accelerate. Beside her, Helena let out a small moan of understanding. "No," the older sister whispered. "Mother wouldn't do that." "But she did," Lauren confirmed softly. She knew Claire was different. That in her flowed the purest stone blood, Miguel's blood, not Giuseppe's. She would be the only one capable of breaking the curse. "How?" David demanded, his voice hoarse with emotion. "Through love," Isabella replied, her green eyes, the same eyes Claire saw in the mirror every day, shining with ancient wisdom. A love that would defy blood itself. "No," Claire stood abruptly, understanding hitting her like lightning. "You're saying that what I feel for David was planned." "What you feel is real," Lauren said softly. "As real as what I felt for Anthony, as real as the love between Isabella and Miguel. But unlike us, you have a choice." "What choice?" David asked, his eyes meeting Claire's with an intensity that made her heart ache. "Accept the love and break the curse," Isabella replied. "Or deny it and perpetuate the cycle." "But we're siblings," Claire protested, tears burning her eyes. "No," a new voice said from the library door. Everyone turned to see Maria, the housekeeper, entering with a yellowed envelope in her hands. "You're not—" "Maria?" Helena whispered. "What are you talking about?" The housekeeper, who had always seemed so discreet, so invisible, raised her chin with surprising dignity. "I served your mother, Beatrice, for 30 years. I was the one who helped with Claire's birth. And I was the one who swore to keep the last stone secret." She handed the envelope to Claire with trembling hands. Inside there was a letter written in the same elegant handwriting Claire had recognized on Bella's room walls. "My dear Claire," she began reading aloud, her voice trembling. "If you're reading this, it means the time for truth has come. You are not my biological daughter, though I loved you as such. You are Miguel's daughter, not the original Miguel, but his descendant, who also worked in this house. He and I fell in love repeating Isabella's story. But unlike her, I chose to protect you. I gave you up for adoption, knowing that one day you would return, knowing that in you, Miguel and Isabella's blood would flow stronger than the stone's poison." Claire stopped reading, her hands trembling so much the paper almost fell. David approached, taking the letter from her hands to continue reading. "The love you will feel for David is not forbidden. It's predestined. You are the two halves of the original story. He carrying Giuseppe Stone's blood, you Miguel's. Together, you can finally break the curse that has been destroying our family for generations. Forgive me for not telling you before. Forgive me for letting you think you were a stone. But it was necessary for your protection, and so destiny could be fulfilled." "So we're not siblings," Claire whispered, looking at David as if seeing him for the first time. "No," Isabella confirmed, her figure beginning to glow more intensely. "You are the chance for redemption, the possibility of a love that heals, not destroys." "And Bella?" Helena asked, embracing her niece. "What's her role in all this?" "She is the last," Lauren replied, approaching her daughter with a sad smile. "The last to carry both Stone and Miguel blood. Through her the cycle can end or continue." Bella stood up, her blue eyes shining with wisdom beyond her age. "That's why I can see you. Why I hear the music." "Yes, dear." Lauren caressed her daughter's face with translucent fingers. You have the gift like Claire, like I had. And now? David asked, his voice hoarse with emotion. What do we do? You choose, Isabella replied simply. Choose between love and fear, between truth and secrets, between breaking the curse or perpetuating it. Claire felt the weight of the moment, of destiny, of choice. She looked at David and saw in his green eyes all the love she had tried to deny, all the guilt he had carried, all the possibility of redemption. I choose love, she said firmly, extending her hand to him. I choose truth. David intertwined his fingers with hers, and the moment they touched, the music, that ancient lullaby, filled the library with overwhelming force. But now it wasn't a lament, it was a celebration. Isabella and Lauren began to fade, their smiles illuminating the environment one last time. The circle is broken, Isabella declared. Love has conquered hate, the blood has been cleansed. Mommy, Bella called, tears streaming down her face. I'll always be with you, my love, Lauren smiled, but now in peace, now free. With a final chord of the music, the apparitions disappeared. The fireplace fire returned to normal, and the air seemed lighter, as if a centuries-old weight had been lifted. Claire looked at David, at their intertwined hands, at the future that now opened before them. A future without curses, without secrets, without guilt. Shall we start over? He asked softly. Claire smiled, pulling him closer. We start over, but this time with the truth. And when their lips met, there was no more weight, no more doubt. There was only love, a love strong enough to break curses, to heal ancient wounds, to bring light to the deepest shadows. The stone mansion, for the first time in generations, was at peace. And in the garden, a single white rose began to bloom under the moonlight, its beauty no longer stained by the blood of the past, but promising a future of redemption and true love. 6 months later, the stone mansion had transformed completely. The oppressive atmosphere had given way to something light and welcoming. The gardens now bloomed with colorful flowers, and children's laughter echoed through the halls. Claire and David had married in a simple ceremony, surrounded by the few people who knew the whole truth. Helena had become more than a sister-in-law. She was the best friend Claire never had. And Bella, finally free from the weight of visions and nightmares, was simply a normal, happy child. The 3rd floor had been renovated and turned into an art studio where Claire painted, and Bella drew her colorful dreams. The basement library became a place of research and family history, but now without dark secrets. Maria still worked at the mansion, but now she smiled more, her movements lighter. She had become the guardian of the family's new story. One of love, healing, and hope. On quiet evenings, Claire would sometimes still hear a faint melody in the wind, but it was no longer the lament of tormented souls. It was a song of gratitude, of peace found, of a curse finally broken. Anthony had never been found, and perhaps it was better that way. Some chapters needed to remain closed so new ones could begin. One evening, as they sat in the garden watching Bella play with a new puppy David had surprised her with, Claire felt the familiar touch of her husband's hand on hers. Do you ever regret it? He asked softly. Coming here, getting involved in all this madness? Claire looked at their joined hands, at the white rose bush that now grew abundantly where once there had been only thorns, at Bella's bright smile. Never, she replied. Sometimes the most beautiful stories begin with the deepest mysteries. And sometimes, David said, leaning to kiss her, love really is strong enough to conquer anything. As the sun set over Chicago, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, the Stone family finally knew peace. The ancient curse had been broken not by power or force, but by the simplest and most powerful force in the universe, true love. In her room, Bella fell asleep, holding a new doll. One that looked like her mother, but with a smile instead of sadness. And in her dreams, she saw not visions of the past, but glimpses of a bright future where love would always triumph over fear. The stone mansion slept peacefully that night.